Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the year of the Newham Pensions Board. I am Tejanidhi Kashyap, the independent chair. We've been meeting using online methods since the pandemic, and we continue to do so. I will ask everyone to mute themselves, and when they want to speak, just raise your hand and you can speak. I know we have some attendees who can't see us, so that's fine. If they have to make a point, just unmute yourself and make a point. So I will go through the names of the attendees, and please introduce yourselves. John Hollins.
Yes, good evening. My name is John Hollins. I'm an employer representative.
Thank you. John Saunders. John, you're on mute.
Good evening. I'm also an employer representative. My name's John Saunders.
Thank you, John. Catherine.
I'm Catherine Hanlon. I'm the GMB employee and representative.
Thank you. And I see that we don't have two other attendees. So let's go to the officers. So I see Jackie.
Good evening, I'm Jackie Andress. I'm the pensions contract manager for Newham.
Thanks, Jackie. James.
Hi there, James Cox, Head of People Transactional Service, here in capacity of Pensions Admin.
Thank you. And Rakesh.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Rakesh Rajan. I manage the Newham Pension Fund.
Thank you. And I see James Grafton.
Yep, good evening. I'm James Grafton. I work for Newham Pensions Administration, officer under Jackie and James.
Hi, James. And we have two guests, Mark and Greg. So we go with Mark since we can see you. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Mark Waterworth. I'm one of the operations managers at Local Pensions Partnership.
Thanks, Mark, for joining us. And Greg Smith.
Hi, I'm Greg Smith, Director of Strategy for Local Pensions Partnership Administration. Apologies for having the technical challenges that I am, but hopefully they will be resolved during the meeting. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much for joining us. That's fine. Don't worry about that. And finally, we have Pauline from the pensions, from Newham, who will be taking the minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Pauline Egan from Democratic Services.
Thank you. And Pauline, do we have any apologies for absence?
No formal apologies, Chair. I know Domford Varden is having trouble joining. He sent me a message, so I've asked him to try and join on the browser link instead of the Zoom link. So he may join us later.
Okay, thank you. So I think we have quorum, so it shouldn't affect us. So we'll, if he can join us, that'd be great. Well, that's fine if you can't. Declarations of interest. Any? This is the time for members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests. No? Okay, great. Thank you. So minutes of the last meeting. So this is to agree the minutes of the last meeting. And I know that the actions related to the meetings are not included. So we will come to that when we discuss the actions log. So for this agenda item, I ask the board to agree that the minutes represent an accurate record of the meeting we had in November. Please raise your hands, or please shout if you have any, if you don't disagree. Okay, thank you. I can see the voting members' hands. All right. So I see we have an agenda item from related to what the guests are going to tell us. So James, do you want to just give us a brief introduction before we get to what they're going to present?
Yeah, certainly. So we invited Greg to come to the pension board. As we know, LPPA launched a new pension administration system for Newham in November, and we know we've had, with any new system, there's technical issues and process issues, and it's kind of a good chance for LPPA just to kind of present the current position about where they are with the system, challenges, and sort of the plan moving forward, to kind of just give board sort of just a flavour about where we kind of are as a function at the moment. So I will hand over to Greg and Mark.
Thank you, James. So Greg, Mark, who wants to go first?
Thank you, Chair. It's Greg here. If it's okay, I'll go first, and I'll
Absolutely.
I'll provide some context, I guess, to the position that we're in and to the report that you've got in front of you, and then we can go into some details. And absolutely. So just in terms of, I haven't met you before, so I'm relatively new to Local Pensions Partnership Administration. I have a long history in the LGPS, mainly in governance and project-related roles and strategic roles. I worked for another part of the group, developing the strategy, and then in the summer I was asked to come and develop the business plan for Local Pensions Partnership Administration, and then asked to remain as part of the executive. And we have a new executive team in place that's been in place since November. So it's a new team in place and a new way of managing our relationship with our partners and clients. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here, because I'm the Newham and Havering executive member. And by that means each partner has an executive member of the management team, which I think is a really good idea, because it means we can get right to the heart of the issues and have a direct relationship with you, which is excellent. We'll come on to them in a second, but the results for Q3 are understandable to a certain extent, but not where we want to be ultimately. I think I'd like to provide some context for that. We have been through a year of transition during the last year. You may or may not be aware that we went through a transformation of the pensions administration system, which is a huge undertaking. That went live in November for Newham and Havering, but had been a process that we've been undergoing with a number of our partners throughout the year. We have 18 local authorities and fire authorities that we manage the pensions on their behalf. So it's a significant undertaking with 650,000 members, and the transition was a significant one. We did anticipate some of those challenges, and for that reason, the service level agreements, we had an agreement to relax those during the transition. But it was it's been a year of disruption, and I think also I would say the system has probably taken a little while longer to get used to, both on our side, but also that for employers and our partners as well. So I think it's still a little bit clunky. I think what you'll see in the performance report is we've delivered performance of 88% against a target, a usual target. Our usual pensions administration SLA target is 95%. So we've delivered 89%, sorry, just under where we would normally be. But I think that the reason I'm providing you the context is that for the last 6 months, there's been a significant amount of a strain on the business, and I think that's reflected by, if you look at the August 22 onwards figures, those reflect that strain, and that's the business getting ready and transitioning clients onto that new system. I'm pleased to say that December was the last time we needed to do a go live. So all of our partners, all of our members, of our employers are now on the new system. And the new system itself is something that I'm sure that we will ultimately benefit from. One of the reasons why we were keen to move system is because we wanted to have a technology platform that enables us to drive member and employer improvements in the future. So whether that be possibilities such as the ability to retire online or to do far more on a self-service basis, as you would do with any other interaction. We feel now we've got the technology platform to enable us to do that. The challenge is it's taken a little bit more getting used to than we would anticipate. It's been clunky for both your side and our side, and for that we apologise that it's not quite where it needs to be. But as I said, we did anticipate a certain amount of that, and there's always going to be a certain amount of disruption with a significant change. But what we need to do is get back to service as quickly as possible, and that is absolutely our priority. I think just in terms of setting the expectations of the audience, I think that it will take a couple of quarters for us to get back to. Okay, it's not something that we'll try to hit our SLAs as you can imagine, but I think it is going to take us a couple of quarters to get back to the service that we want to. There's still some tweaks we need to make to the system, but I think once we are able to iron out those improvements and if you like the clunkiness or the bumpiness in the system, I think it does give us the ability to really move forward. And we have a client forum coming up in a couple of weeks where Caroline, Jackie and James are attending, I believe, where we can go into a little bit more detail about what that looks like, what the business plan looks like, what the changes we're making look like, and how we can ultimately then focus on delivering an excellent service for members and employers, particularly one that focuses on quality. So the way that we are set up, our ethos, if you like, is that we are a high quality value for money provider. We don't want there to be challenges with the service. We don't want there to be complaints from the members. We want to make sure that we're the experts and you're able to rely on us. And at the moment, we're probably relying quite a lot on your team. So I think there's times, we had a meeting today, for example, and Caroline and I would have spoken a couple of times. There's times when we're expecting, working in partnership to try and get this right. So we're getting good feedback from the team in what's working, what's not quite working. And that's great. But ultimately what we're looking to do is to iron all of that out as quickly as possible and then move back to being able to make improvements that we want to see to the enhancements to the member and employer journey. At the moment, our priority is to get all of the bumpiness out of the system and make sure that then we can get back to operating within SLA. So I think that focus on enhanced quality will certainly be coming down the line. I'll pause there just for a second. I can't see whether there's hands up at the moment, but what I wanted to do is just provide that context and I guess the scale of the changes. Throughout that, we have continued to make payments. I think in total we make over £100 million worth of payments a month. So that's continued, but what I think some of the non-urgent cases are the ones that have been delayed slightly. But I'm happy to pause there and see if there's any questions on that context piece.
Sure, thanks, Greg. There are a few questions here.
Sorry, Chair, can I just quickly jump in case this might forestall some questions? At the time of creating my report for this meeting, I only had Q2 administration report. I did not have the Q3, which is what Greg has been referring to earlier. So your reports that you've got does not mention Q3. I've literally only just got it a few days ago, so it could not be yet included in this report. So just in case there's any confusion, Q3 was not published in time.
I see some casework performance against SLA on page 41, 42, which has September stats. Yeah,
so it's up to end of Q2 rather than Q3. And Greg's been referring to Q3.
Yeah, so I do have the Q2 report as well. I can refer to, if that's the one that committee have got in front of them, that's easier. I can refer to the Q2 report, which has a performance figure of 83%.
I can't understand because it says September 22. So are we saying September 22 is Q2?
That's Q2.
Okay.
Okay, apologies for that confusion. I've got both in front of me now, so I can refer to the Q2, but I guess I've also given you an update in terms of the performance up to the end of December there as well. So yeah, which improved to 89%. But I've now got the Q2 report in front of me, which is 83.4 on page 11.
Yeah. So that's on page 41 in our material. So thanks for that, Jackie. So I see some questions I saw John Hollins and John Saunders having questions. Either of you can go first. I see John is unmuted. John, go ahead. John Saunders.
Me first. Okay. Are we talking about the new members portal? Is that partly what you were just telling us about, Greg? I got a bit lost.
Yeah, so it's more than the new members portal. So it's a whole completely change of the system. But so it's the way that we run, and it's the calculation engine. Let's put it that way. It's a calculation engine behind pensions administration. So everything that we do, all of the processes that we run, whether someone calls in for a divorce settlement, or they call in because they're retiring or they're joining the scheme, whatever it might be, it's the workflow and the calculation engine that drives all of those processes is what we've changed. We've also, alongside that, it comes with a member self-service, a member online portal, and we've had to ask all of our members to rejoin the self-service. So that was a significant undertaking as well. So yes, that's what we're referring to. But just to be clear, it's probably, as a pension administrator, it's the most significant thing you can change, and you don't do it lightly. It's kind of a once in a lifetime activity that you do, and therefore it's due to the disruption that it potentially causes. So it's been a significant undertaking for us, but that's why we need a couple of more quarters to really get the system working as effectively as we think it can do, and then start to make those enhancements.
Can I make a quick comment then? I've got a very old, very small Newham pension, so I was able to go into the new members portal, whatever you like to call it. And I'd just like to say I thought it would, I was quite impressed with it. It had most of my data was correct. There's a couple of things it didn't have, unfortunately, but I think you've covered that by saying you're still developing some of these things, and I'll take those things up with the officers. But I did want to say that the appearance of it and the way one uses it, I thought was very encouraging, actually, because we haven't had this in Newham before November, have we? So I'd just like to make that comment.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Good to hear it from our perspective, and yes, we will continue to develop that functionality.
I was looking for faults, so I'm usually quite good at that. So it was quite good. Sorry to interrupt you, John.
Okay, Chair, am I okay to proceed?
Yes,
Chair?
John Hollins, yes.
There's just a quick question for Greg. He mentioned that it might take 2 quarters to return to the service levels we had sort of back in during the tail end of last year. But my question is about what will the phasing of the implementation of correcting the implementation issues be? Will all your customers be updated with the new procedures or system changes at the same time, or will there be some other order?
No, good question. It was a phased approach. So we have, as I said, 18 partners that we work with, 18 clients, and some of them were going live from February, March time, and then there was a second, the phase 2 clients, 9 phase 2 clients went live October, November, December time, and we kind of phased that over a period. So I think so there were, in some respects, Newham has benefited from some of the by going second, because there's been some of the or going in the phase 2, should we say, because a whole raft of issues were already kind of ironed out. So what we're faced with from a Newham perspective is the tail ender, and I think, you know, it's about what access what documents can the internal pensions team at Newham see. Are they able to access the systems? Do the systems do what they want to from their side, from the employer and the client side as well? Those are the kind of quick wins that we need to work out. But then there's also a few processes that we need to make smoother as well. So I think that there was definitely phasing, and like I said, Newham came in that second wave of clients that went live.
Okay, so there's some quick wins that it seems to me from what you're saying, the internal team are driving, because they'll have to tell you what they want to do, I presume. But the other issues, would I be right in saying that it's likely to be that second quarter before any other issues that relate to Newham will be dealt with?
No, that's not. No, so apologies if I gave you that impression. So in terms of the team, it's absolutely very helpful that we're working together and getting the feedback. We've set up a new inbox and a new method of engaging with Caroline and the team, and we're getting daily feedback on where we need to, things that need to be tweaked. So that feedback loop is happening, and we're also looking for improvements ourselves. In terms of the rolling out of improvements, where we are now is the system as a whole needs to be, where there are improvements, it tends to impact all of our clients. So it's not the case that Newham's at the back of the queue at all. Newham's very much, in any enhancements that we're making, any improvements that we're making to the processes or to the functionality or to the system get applied to Newham from day one as well. So it was only the initial launch and go live that was phased, because we didn't want to have a big bang. We didn't think that was the right approach. We wanted to phase in our clients. But in terms of enhancements, it's now applied to everyone as and when those improvements are made available.
Okay. So thanks, Greg. Chair, can I just refer to Jackie or James for just 1 second?
Sure.
In terms of the implementation, are there no major issues that are causing some major problems to our pensions administration side?
That's a question for James and Jackie.
I wouldn't say there's anything major, but there are a number of smaller issues that are making things a little bit more difficult than they should be. But there is nothing that is actually a big red flag that's waving. I wouldn't say that it's anywhere near that bad, but it's got problems, and we have been communicating those to our PPA quite consistently.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, John. So Greg, a couple of questions from me. So the teething issues which we're seeing now, is this something which is ongoing from your first phase, or is this symptomatic only in phase 2?
I think that it's a mixture of both. Some of the improvements that we've needed to make have been from phase 1 as well. So we've needed to get the development time of the provider to make some of the changes. So some of them were there beforehand, and we've now got them in place, or we're getting them in place. Some of them will be symptomatic of having everyone on the same system. But I think from a day-to-day local government perspective, we also manage the fire scheme and pension scheme for police scheme for a number of clients as well. But from a local government scheme, I think that most of the issues are ironed out. And as Jackie said, there's things that are taking longer. It's more processes that are taking longer to do than we would like. And once we can go through, as we are doing, working out why that is happening, how we can improve that, then that's certainly what we're doing. I mean, just to give you an idea, we have an executive management team, executive leadership team that meets on a daily basis to go through the fixes that are being applied and rolled out. So this is a kind of a very active proposition that we're working to. It's not something that we've kind of taken the foot off the gas. It's not something that doesn't have visibility right at the top of the executive leadership team. As I said, there's daily meetings to get this right and to get us functioning as we know the system should be.
I see. Okay, thanks. That's helpful. And another question I had is this specific to your new workflow system and the calculation engine, or is it more around people? Is it about people not adjusting to the new tools, or is it that you don't have enough people?
I think so. I would say that the system challenges are the system tweaks and the function and the workflow tweaks are things that we need to deal with from a systems perspective. I think whenever you change systems, things always take a little bit longer, no matter how much training you can give. I think that staff are taking a little bit of time to get used to the system, but I would say that tends to be in specific cases. So where we have maybe started some queries in one system and we've transitioned them onto another, that's caused a problem. I mean, Mark was telling me this morning that actually if he starts a query in a case in the new system, in UPM, the new system, then it's actually fine and easier. It's some of the challenges are where we've gone through the transition and we've maybe started a process in one system and it's been ported over and it's finished in another. That's some of the complications that we're dealing with. But I think generally as a sector, the LGPS, local government pension scheme as a sector, is suffering from having the experience that you might need. I think there's been we certainly know as a business we've lost a lot of people. What we are doing on that front, therefore, to replace that experience is a mixture of trying to recruit some experience to replace it, but also trying to develop our training and development approach, and in particular making sure that we can get to a position where we are in effect creating our own or growing our own expertise internally and providing them with career paths through through the business. I think, you know, the business has been very focused on the implementation of the new system, understandably, given the size of the change. But moving forward, now we need to focus on training and customer service and all of the things that we know we can do to get back to providing the quality of service that we need to for Newham and our other partners.
Okay, that's very insightful. Thank you. A question for James and Jackie. So the board, as we know, needs to focus on improvements in customer service, needs to keep an eye on it. So is there any specific action you would like for us to carry out or to review? Because I think the improvement in service is something which is very important. We need to keep an eye on it. So how do you want to take this forward?
I think it's I think as far as the board's kind of position on it, so one of the parts that LPPA will be doing sort of whilst they're going through the improvement stage to get back to sort of the desired level is kind of looking at sort of monthly performance reporting. So obviously it's giving board the latest information that had on LPPA's performance, but it's also trying to hold, basically to actually watch it going in the right direction. Then it really is just a case of keeping the focus on it. Obviously, we're going to look to be getting sort of the membership numbers onto the pension point. That's going to obviously be a big improvement, but I think it is a case of seeing how the stats are kind of stacking up in relation to sort of caseloads, and then potentially it's maybe looking at some exception cases. So we can just bring it and we can try and show from a pension board perspective about where issues have kind of happened, and then making sure that the impacts of them are at least raised with LPPA on sort of a way forward. So if there's particular actions coming out from sort of delays in estimates, for an example, it's working out why there was particular delays and seeing if it's attributable to the new system or whether it's a process improvement or something like that. So that's how we've probably got to try and be, is just maybe the performance report just have a little bit more focus. I think probably we're assessed over the next sort of month or two on how the performance is going, but potentially it may be a case of asking if Greg or Mark may attend whilst we present sort of the next period's monthly report or performance report, and then kind of going from there. Really, I think that's kind of is just mainly board having a focal point on monitoring performance. I think that's probably the best way to kind of go.
I think I agree with that approach. Any do the board members agree with that? So I think it'd be good to have the reps, Greg and Mark. I think they can come back in our April meeting, if I'm not wrong. So I think that gives you good lead time to see an improvement, service levels going back, and we can, you can iron out any other issues that you have. Does that sound fair, Greg?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
From Greg, this Greg here. That's sorry for disturbing you. Yeah, it's Greg here. Yeah, absolutely fine from my perspective.
Okay, thank you. So we keep that as an action. So thanks very much, Greg, and Mark. Thanks for attending.
You're welcome. Shall we leave the meeting now and let you carry on with the rest of your agenda?
I think you can leave the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was useful. So let's move on. Agenda item 6, that's the actions log. As I noted earlier, we don't have the actions from our last meeting. John?
We left the minutes to hear from our guests, but we haven't looked at the matters arising from the minutes.
Yes, so that's what I hinted at when I said that we look at those matters when we look at the actions. So typically in the pension board meeting, we are not allowed to discuss items arising. That's the input I've received from the governance team.
If that's true, Chair, I don't wish to be a member of a committee where we can't check whether issues have been carried forward or not. There were dozens of issues at the last meeting. The papers for this meeting are not very good, and I don't think what you're saying is correct. I would like to see that in writing from the governance team if it's true. I mean, it is ridiculous, but there are a number of issues that came up last time where we promised we will get reports back and we're not going to get them. The same thing happened at the last meeting and the meeting before that. And some of these are to me, quite major points. I don't think one can be a proper member of a pension board if you cannot make sure that items which we agreed to carry forward are carried forward.
Yeah, as I noted, those actions which were raised in the last meeting are not in this pack. And I have asked James to give an update on that. So what I said is it won't be considered as an agenda item to review what you said, the matters arising from last meeting, but they have to be captured as part of the actions and they have to be included in the actions. So
can I have a copy of this government's decision? I just don't believe it.
John, this will be sent to you. John, this will be sent to you. This will be sent to you. This will be sent to you, and let's just stick to the agenda. So can we have a review of the?
I am trying to stick to the agenda. I'm very angry about this change. It just stops one spends hours reading the papers, finding that there's something which needs following through, and then you're not allowed to follow it through. It is pointless attending the meetings if it's going to be conducted in this way. I mean, to this meeting, not only did that happen, we've just been listening to a guest who thought we had papers in front of us, which we didn't have in front of us. I mean, it just isn't acceptable the way this is being conducted. Sorry,
okay, thank you for that.
I just don't see the point.
That's thank you, John. I take your point. Can we minute the discomfort and the issues which the member is facing and in strong terms? So can we minute that, please?
Yes.
And can we ensure that the actions log are updated?
Yes, Chair.
So James, I don't know if you are able to identify the items from last meeting because they're not in the agenda, but John did send an email out earlier, if that helps in referencing that. So anyway, who's going to take this item?
No
this is James or Jackie?
Yeah, I'll cover this off.
Okay.
So just in two parts. So if I try and pick up and then sort of try and reference in the notes sort of the part about it, and I do apologize, there has not been the movement in some of the actions that we kind of wanted to be in this period. So I will hold my hands up completely on that one. So just going through the action log, and as I said, I'll try and reference it back to the notes of the meeting. So action number PB036. So this was around about the statutory policy statements that had been considered. So this is the one where it's basically what comes to board regularly when the last policies have kind of come through, when they're due to come through again. So that's something that will be circulated after we had a draft ready for board, but there needed to be some further updates. So we didn't want to take something that was going to probably incur more questions. So I'll make a commitment sort of on the note that will be circulated the days after this meeting. So that's the first point.
Is that like a table that you're going to include?
Then essentially what it would be is a table of, say, is all the so it would include like communication policy, discretions. It basically lists out everything that within a fund is either a policy or a formal document that we kind of have that either has to get cleared by a committee or if any updates has to be cleared by a committee. But then as we're looking to schedule next year or sort of next year's meetings, that's where we're looking to move board to be 3 weeks before committee. So anything we take to committee is presented at board for comment. So there's actually sort of a forward impression on there. So yeah, so that's going to be circulated. And like I said, I will commit because, like I said, we've had a number of issues in the last sort of weeks and sort of couple of months regarding one with the movement of LPPA system, but then we've had sort of some internal issues. So what we will be doing is committing to sort of getting an update, and I will also commit. We'll do just I'm confirmed I might be speaking out of turn, Pauline, but I'm gonna, if we can provide updates on the action log outside of the board rather than so they're actually work in progress, so it's a live document before we publish the final one before each board, that will also kind of help us to show the progress, because I'm committed that the last few months haven't been great at clearing down the actions.
Yes, so we can send the updates as we go, James.
Perfect. Yeah, so in relation to the pensions admin strategy, again, it's in a draft mode at this particular stage, and that's what we'll be looking to.
Is this something which has to be finalized before the year end?
No, the admin strategy is one of them documents that it's something we should have and we should be working towards achieving, but it's not something we've ever had an admin strategy in Newham. So that's what we're trying to actually create one, to actually implement one for the first time. So yes, in theory, it would have been nice to have one, some time ago. And it's just that kind of one now. We're kind of keen, because if we can get it up circulated, then we'll try and get it ready for the new financial year. So that's going to be sort of the aim anyways. That's why we have got sort of a press onto it. So that's PB.
Sorry to interrupt you, John. That's one of the points you raised, the admin strategy.
Yeah, I'm just gonna sort of just tick along. So yeah, that was one of the points by John. In relation to the audit, so this is one where there's not a lot of. So this was a case for them to agree the scope. So I've had an initial conversation with audit in relation to just actually referring back to the code of practice on a pension board and seeing if that could be potentially something they can carry out an internal audit on. And as far as that's one that's potentially going to be in the future strategy. So there might not necessarily be in internal audit scope to carry out an audit for pensions administrations, predominantly the pensions board, for probably certainly not in the next 12 months, was the feedback I've kind of got, and they're going to take away and come back. So when I have a sort of a more, so I keep it up there, because I get a final sort of, until I get a date that they're going to look at doing an audit, then the action has to remain, but I don't expect to get a date in the next probably even at the next meeting, there probably won't be an update in relation to that. Communication, so we've made a bit of progress in relation to communication. That's PB 049, and that's one of the part of the point in relation to communications as a whole. So we're looking at doing a session for new employees around financial wellbeing as part of a HR package to include pensions within there. In relation to that is, if once we do the rollout of that for the corporate employees, we're going to look to see whether it's something we could potentially do for school-based employees as well. And off the back of that, it's condensing the booklet that's circulated as part of the automatic enrolment, and that's what we're looking to sort of circulate around as well. So hopefully that session may take place early March. So I hope we'll be able to give some form of update to the board on how that progressed and the literature that we kind of submitted with it. In relation to training, we did have a conversation internally, so that's PB 057, on the best way to kind of do this. And I think, although yes, we can do invite to an employer's session or a separate members session, but it may be more beneficial if we'll do it actually led by sort of ourselves, officers, to actually carry out a session, and we can tie it into just a general statutory update training session, so we can just cover two parts. where we're kind of looking, so rather than sort of sending board for a formal session that's carried out by LPP, but we're actually do a session on ourselves. So I look to try and get our diaries aligned on that one.
So there's one action 56, which we asked asked for it to be opened, rather remain opened. It's not here. So the 56 was about the timings of the board and committee, as well as to
that was
talk about the communications between the board and committee.
Yeah, so
that was
in
number
relation,
56.
So that's what we're looking to do for next municipal year, is to have the board 3 weeks before committee. So I have to get the final proposed dates to Pauline in the next tomorrow is in order for it to kind of be publicised. But that's what we're looking to do.
So this is the meetings after May, is it?
So obviously we have to look at our annual meeting. I'm thinking of pulling that into the last meeting of the municipal year rather than the first meeting. So then it ties neatly into having a schedule, because as I'm sure you would all probably prefer to meet, sort of not have to an annual meeting and a pension board meeting within the space of a week. So if we move it to the end of the municipal year for the end of year report to look forward on our performance, what we've achieved this year, then that hopefully will be it will just tie in neater, because that's what I'm kind of conscious of. Because if we can get it so that we have a fair crack at getting papers in front of board and have time to make changes or incorporate any comments that we kind of feel needed, we have that to take to committee. So that's what we're aiming for, is to have that 3 week gap between them, because it's close enough that the papers are going to be ready for committee, and then ready to be publicised to board as well. But
is 3 weeks sufficient for you to present to the board, get the feedback, minute the meeting, and include it?
Well,
it's a bit tight.
The trouble being, if we do it of a longer period, then it means that a lot of the reports that we'd be taking to committee would be having to forward track them a lot more. So potentially things may move on, and we may need to include that kind of window. We can note the changes we're kind of within the board, because what we're how I'm kind of visualizing it is basically take a paper, take a comment, we'll move that forward, and then at the following board, we're obviously feedback on committee as part of the admin update anyway, and then that will obviously be opportunity for board members to kind of make any comments if we feel that anything wasn't necessarily as interpreted. But my kind of one is, if we're presenting something that we're planning to take to committee, then we'd be trying to look to make sure that we've actually got the actions covered and understood during the board meeting, rather than relying on the notes to come through sort of the week or so after. So I feel that's on. And in relation to communications of board and committee as a whole, it's kind of what I tried to pick up within the terms of reference. I know that's part of the admin paper, so I won't.
I think we'll come to that. I have some feedback.
But if I can, I was going to say, if we pick up that as part of the terms of reference, because there's obviously the part in relation to the committee chair, the change, and also how that ties into the terms of reference. So I'll let Jackie pick up the admin update, talk about the position of committee chair, and then as part of the terms of reference, that was my kind of plan about how we interact, but possibly from feedback that we've kind of had with the committee chair already, that may be a change to that. So but I'll touch base on that at the terms of reference section. In relation to other,
there were some other actions. Shall I go through them?
I've picked up the couple. There's one that I might just need clarification on, but there's one in particular I picked up about the abatement scheme. So this is one that we want to take forward, but we need the date from LPPA. So unfortunately, with the issues that's kind of been going, we haven't been provided with the number of people who are currently on abatement and how much that was actually worth in order to produce the paper to say whether it's, the cost benefit analysis basically of tweaking our abatement rules. So we haven't got the data to kind of do it. But that is something to have on the actions log, is around about the abatement. I know the actions aren't on the action log, but that is one kind of got through.
There's one more about this is more for Rakesh, I suppose. So I had sent an
Yes.
email about to the previous chair. I know the committee chair has resigned, so I don't know if there's an update from the committee about that. And I think there was discussion we had about liability driven instruments, and I think Rakesh, you said that the board doesn't, sorry, the Newham scheme doesn't have
we don't.
liability driven instruments. And I think we said that it's a good idea to say that out loud, like some other schemes have done in the country. I mean, we're a few months away from now. I see the bond markets have settled.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. I mean, that's still it'll be good if you can just discuss it and bring that to a closure.
Sure, will do. Did you want me to go on to the next?
No. So that was the item for you.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, someone has to remind me about the point
I
which.
was going to say, as far as I'll say it anyway, and then I'll wait if I'm pulled over the coals for saying stuff that's not on the action logs. But if in relation to abatement discretionary policy option, so essentially we are looking at the abatement discretions, and that's kind of linked to the abatement because abatement plays a heavy part in the discretions that we've kind of got, but we're actually looking overall as an authority about some of the discretions that we've actually got. So we will look to do a long awaited update of them. My estimate for them is probably going to be around the end of March, April before we have a draft ready. So my kind of view now is possibly if myself and Jackie maybe work with Pauline to get an actions log of what we believe is together, circulate to board, get feedback to make sure everything's covered, and then we can kind of go from there. Because just like I said, the worst thing, I don't want anyone to kind of feel like we're not discussing things. You know, I'm honest enough to admit certain things haven't been done that I hoped would be done by now. So I certainly don't want to hide from the fact, and it's more than right that board hold account when we haven't done things that we should do.
Yeah.
So I do want to make sure that we've got the transparency side.
I think I mean it's fine if you've not got an opportunity to work on this action, but what is be useful is if you can log them anyway. So we'll still discuss it and say no progress has been made. But
yeah, I think that's the kind of one. I think I'd feel better once we've kind of got this board out of the way, is maybe circulate what we believe the total list of actions, because yeah, I know there's stuff that we're working on that we've spoken about that wasn't necessarily on the action log. So I'd feel better just to circulate that round to make sure that we're all clear on what's actually the asked. Because I think one of the points John made in relation to pension regulations, that was one I just wouldn't mind just a bit of clarity on whether that was actually the terms of reference changes in relation to that. So if it is, you know, we've got the section tonight about terms of reference changes.
I think there's a point about sharing important aspects of the regulations to the board. I mean, whatever was relevant to the board, the functionality of the board. So I suppose that's probably covered in terms of reference. But if there's any expectations of the board not in the expectations of the board not covered in the terms of reference, we can probably cross-reference and see that.
Yeah, I think the terms of reference, I to be honest, if I come on to the terms of reference, because then I end up repeating myself. But yeah, if I pick up the stuff on terms of reference, because I have a view on that, and it may just be good to have that conversation in relation to that. But in relation to actions, I think once Rakesh does his part after this, we'll see if there's any other further actions that maybe just need to be addressed. But I hope I've tried to at least pick them up from the notes and the action log, and what I also think's outstanding as well.
Yeah, John.
I think we were promised some update the effects of inflation, and I think this is more crucial now because of the recent Bank of England interest rate rises, and one or two of the investment companies seem to be parking quite large sums of money here and there. I don't know much about them, but what one sees in the press is slightly concerning. It may be that they don't affect us at all. But have we got any further comment of the effect of inflation on the fund? That's what we're looking at.
Rakesh, will you want to take that?
Sure. So I think we had this discussion when we had the meeting, but fortunately, the way that our strategic asset allocation has been put together, we fortunately have a good diversification, and we haven't had that impact due to diversification of asset classes, and secondly, because we also have a derivative, which is a currency hedge and an equity protection derivative. So we had some, and we've just taken a decision at the last committee just to extend that. And then after the committee we have in March, we'll be looking to see with our economic advisors if we need to continue that for the short to medium term, depending on how inflation sort of pans out over the coming year, over the next 12 months. We will take a decision on that. So fortunately, at this moment in time, we haven't had any major issue in terms of the way that inflation has gone. And that's also been built in with our actuaries' assumptions for the triennial valuation. So so far so good, fortunately.
I think well, that's good news, but I think we should have it in writing to the board from the committee, if you like.
Yeah.
Just a single sentence to that effect. I mean, we raised it properly,
Yeah.
I think, and we need to record the response. And then
Sure.
in addition to that, there is, you just mentioned the triennial review.
Yeah.
Can we have an update on where we are on that at the moment?
Sure. Did you want me to cover that now, or did you want to do it in the part of the pensions update? Am I doing the pensions update now? Sorry.
I think you can cover it in the next item. So let's just.
Well, I'm happy for the next item. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And the other thing was the cash flow tables, which the ones we've been presented with in the past are extremely confusing. And I have asked previously that these be updated in with suitable notes so that we can look at these in a sensible manner. And having attended one or two of the pension committee meetings, I know the new chair is also equally concerned about us having everybody having a knowledge of the cash flow situation or the predicted cash flow situation. So can we follow that up as well, please? Not necessarily, we can't do it tonight, but we can follow it up in time.
Yeah, sure. So I took your comments forward to the pensions again. We haven't had a cash flow update done because the situation was we had to postpone one of our meetings. So the figures that we need for the end of what within the council, what we call Q3, weren't produced when we had the December meeting. So those will be going to the next committee. So that's why you haven't seen any updates on that, but they will be incorporated.
But you do agree that they are important to us and to the committee, aren't they? We should have knowledge of them.
Yes, those are generally part. When we do the updates quarterly, we normally include those as well. And also, as you'll recall, we had the valuation training. I think that was on the 24th of November, and within part of that, what the actuary actually covered was scenario testing in terms of cash flow. You may recall. So that is something obviously they've also incorporated in terms of when they do the triennial valuation, is to look at scenarios relating to inflation, looking at different aspects of the cash flow, you know, and incorporating those when they make their decisions. So we've had the scenario testing done for inflation. We've also had scenario testing done on the impact of cash flow. So at the moment, we are okay purely because we have, as I've said previously, we have a diversification within our asset base, and we've got a lot of income generating assets, but it's obviously something of high concern for us going forward and obviously for the pension board in terms of how membership is monitored and how membership is increased going over maybe in the long-term trajectory.
I do recall the information we had on cash flow. I didn't find some of it too encouraging, which is why I think we should have a table before us occasionally so that we can look at and see whether there are concerns or not. And it's always well to have those in in a training session or a report from an outside body, but we can't really discuss the importance of them unless they're in front of the board. So I think at some stage soon we should have the revised tables, and they should be in a fashion that we can follow much more readily than in the past.
Rakesh, is that something you provide real time to the committee, or is that something which is included in the papers of the committee?
It's part of the papers we have for the pensions committee.
Okay, so I think there'll be a challenge for all of us, because if we in the long term, if you're planning to have a board meeting 3 weeks before the committee meeting, I don't know how, I don't know if you're able to include that in the board papers before what is included in the committee papers.
That would be difficult because obviously
I think you could probably include the previous one so we can see the one which the committee has already seen.
Yeah. But you have access to all those papers when we have you come as observers, so you should have those. Those are part of the pack that Pauline circulates. They have the cash flows in there.
Chair, the previous ones are so poorly presented, I'm going to be blunt, that they just get passed over. We've never had a proper discussion of cash flow at this board meeting. I can't see any reason why papers of this nature, which are being prepared for the pension committee, shouldn't also be jointly prepared for the board. And then the pension committee can take into account any comments we've made, because to some extent, in terms of cash flow, I would say the pension committee is the senior body, so our comments might be of interest to them rather than the other way around.
I'm happy for you to provide your comments, John, as you've done in the past. So when we circulate the committee papers, I'm happy to put to email us comments in relation to that. I think that probably is an easier medium.
I didn't understand what that meant, really, I'm afraid, Rakesh. What would you be doing?
When we circulate the pension committee papers, they have a cash flow within that. If you have any concerns in relation to that, just please email myself, and then we can obviously take up a committee if there's an issue. Because obviously, if you're looking to have your meeting before then, it probably make more sense for you to give us your comments, and we can address them at the committee.
Are we allowed to give comments like that? Because in the past, when you've raised questions to yourself or to the committee chair, we've not heard back. So I think there is. We need to see there is an official. The feedback we received is we only have to speak in the committee, or we are actually not allowed to speak in the committee. So I think we'll probably deal with this in the terms of reference update, but it's a bit muddled, I think. I don't think it's very clear. Firstly, I think any paper which goes to the committee is the committee's paper. It's not a board paper. I mean, we can see it, but I don't think anyone can accept it as something submitted to the board unless it's in this pack. So it has to be in this pack for it to be, if something the board has to talk or speak on or consider. So, well, I think
we can have a paper which doesn't say ask us to make decisions on. It asks us for comment, or the pension committee to make the decisions.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, we're supposed to be looking at a proper administration of the fund. And if we haven't got an idea of the cash flow over the next 4 or 5 years, I don't see how we can advise the council as the administrative body that things are being concrete. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. I'm just saying, we should be in a position to make a recommendation to the pension committee. not make a decision, but make a recommendation.
I think we're talking cross purposes here, John. The cash flow that we talk about is done on a quarterly basis. I think if you're looking at long-term cash flow, that's something that's normally provided by the actuary, and it forms part of the triennial valuation when they're doing the training, and they provide a cash flow scenario analysis. So that's not something that we have produced, because we would only be looking at what's done on a quarterly basis within the council, yeah, or within the pension fund. We wouldn't be taking a projection for 4 or 5 years, because that's not our skill set. I mean, that's done by actuaries. They will look at discount rates and they will formulate their opinions and give those cash flow outgoings along with the investment advisor.
But their last presentation had inconsistencies in it. It had things missing out. It had a lack of explanation. And I don't think it was of any use to, well, must have been some use. But it was of limited use to both the board, which we did receive, and the pension committee, who received a similar paper. I mean, whatever we're saying, I think something should be done to give a better presentation to the two meetings.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, both meetings just passed over them. I mean, cash flow is quite important to a pension fund, but in both meetings there was no discussion. It was almost, because it was just, they were incoherent. The papers were incoherent to me, they were, and presumably everybody else, because nobody commented on them.
I think generally speaking, John, if there are areas or highlight or concern within the cash flow, it's something that ourselves, myself or the investment advisor, will make members aware of when we have a quarterly strategy meeting, if there are key concerns. And that normally then leads to a review of the strategic asset allocation, and if there's a procurement of other managers or some other kind of scenario. But generally speaking, it is there for noting. We don't have the time to go through all of these, but we generally, when we circulate these before the meeting, I mean, if members want to provide comments on them, we're happy to entertain those. I'm happy to provide comments back from yourselves and from the committee members. But generally speaking, they're for noting, and they're just done for a quarter in real time, as opposed to, it's not done on a long-term projection.
Well, I think every item we've got today, it just says for noting. So on that basis, there wasn't much point in coming to the meeting. I just think we ought to decide whether a knowledge of the cash flow by members of the committee and the board is important or not. If we decide it's not important, let's write that down and then we're covered for the future. Personally, I think it is quite an important factor. And we are not talking about the cash flow over the next 6 months. I mean, it's projected over 5 years, if I remember, 4 years or 5 years. And there were some very arbitrary additions of £20,000 here and £10,000 here, which were never challenged. And they need to be challenged. And they might be right, but they are not necessarily right.
Okay, can I just let's take a step back here. I want to move on in the agenda. So taking the spirit of what John is saying, I think we need to go back with between the committee and the board, discuss what needs to be covered, what the board needs to cover, what the board needs to see. So I think this cash flow issue, we need to itemize that and discuss what actually that is. And I don't think we need to discuss that in the specific meeting, but we need to discuss it outside. So I'm still waiting to hear from the committee about how we're going to proceed with that working group, which I wanted, I think about 2 meetings back. So I know there's been some churn in the committee, but I think we need to move on and get that meeting in. This may take a couple of hours. It's like a workshop. I think we need to really get to the bottom of this, or else I think we'll always have this issue being flagged in every board meeting, very rightfully so, till we get to the bottom of it. So I think on that note, let's just move to the next agenda item.
Chair, I had my hand up and now Christine's got her hand up. Are we able to
I
ask
can't-
questions?
Yeah, I can't see you. Sorry, I can't see. Catherine, is your hand up? I can't see your hand.
It was
You
just
can
to
go. You can
relate.
go ahead. Sorry,
So it was,
yeah, go on.
and I'm not sure whether
Apologies for missing you because it's very dark. I can't see you. But you,
that's
please,
right. So
yeah.
I'm not quite sure if Rakesh can answer this or James. Just regarding obviously the things to do with the cost of living and what's going on, has there been any reports where pension funds have been or people have frozen their pensions where they can't make the contribution anymore?
So we haven't seen from the membership stats a suddenly decline in numbers, or we haven't even seen sort of a large sort of wave of opt-outs. We don't dispute that they might not be coming down the track, but as it stands at this very moment, we're not seeing people leave the pension scheme due to the cost of living. But we can't rule out that, you know, the bite of the cost of living will eventually hit and people may opt to opt out the scheme. Yeah, opt out. So yeah, so at the moment we're not seeing it, and that's what the kind of the stats sort of later in kind of show that we haven't really seen, because we were, if I'm honest, I was kind of expecting to start seeing it from about January, February. So it's maybe on this time that we may start to.
Too early to tell at the minute.
Yeah, it's because if you kind of think if the energy sort of goes up, your higher bills are sort of from November time anyway. So then you're depending on sort of how you pay your energy bills. It's that kind of one. I think it will hit, if it's going to hit you hard, it's going to hit you hard after Christmas. And so that's the subjective kind of view, because nothing's coming through in the data yet. LPPA haven't sort of raised anything as well, but we haven't seen it on a fund level or a Newham as a main employer level.
Okay. All right. Thank you, James.
Okay, anything else before we move to the next
It's
agenda
Christine.
item?
Yeah, sorry, I'm new to the board, so I'm sort of a bit lost. So I just want to request a copy of the minutes and actions from before so that I can cross-reference with my notes what's being answered now, please. And then also, is there any guidance or a policy to this meeting of what we can and can't discuss? Because I'd like a copy of that as well, just so I can get my understanding around the issues that were being raised here and then were being said we can't discuss them. So there must be some guidance.
Yeah, we're what we'll do for you, Christine, self and or Jackie will sort of do a separate meeting anyway with you, just to bring you up to speed on the board anyway. But the terms of reference is one of the items that's coming up later that kind of says the remit of the board, and I'll sort of elaborate more on that when we actually get to that part. But yeah, you still need to kind of have your introductory kind of part, so there's a few things we need to kind of go through with you anyway. So yeah, but no, as far as that, hopefully it'll be clear and we can answer kind of any more questions in relation to how the board's functioning.
Thank you. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's go back to Rakesh for his pensions fund update.
Sure. So just following on from the conversation, Chair. So as you're aware, Councillor Rohit Dasgupta has stepped down, and Councillor John Gray, who's already a member of the committee, was appointed as the new chair on the 16th of January. So we had a meeting with the chair this morning. So we explained, you know, in terms of the relationship with the pension board, and obviously he's happy to meet with you at a mutually convenient time. He's rather busy at the moment because he's just come into this role, but we will arrange a meeting with yourself in due course. So he just wanted to, and he may, if time is available for him, to attend maybe a pension board in the near future as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, is that the only update that you had to give?
No, I was going to actually just give you a brief overview in terms of what we've had at the last committee.
Sure.
So the funding strategy statement, which was part of the training that we had for the valuation, that was agreed pending consultation from all the employers. I believe Jackie circulated that to all the employers, and we didn't have any. Did we have any comments back, Jackie?
Nothing to note, no.
Okay. The other key thing that we've been looking at was there was a consultation paper where we had to provide feedback regarding the TCFD, which is the Climate Financial Disclosures. We're awaiting guidance from DLUC, Department of Levelling Up Committee in Housing, in terms of the impact of that, what that will have for local authorities. We're hoping to receive that maybe in the next month or so. And then obviously this will form part of the criteria in terms of the ESG policy that we have at the moment. So it's to give more disclosures for fund managers, have to provide more disclosures in terms of their carbon emissions, the carbon footprint, and in terms of their manager selection. So all those are integrated within their, will be part of our ESG policy, but there are specific metrics which the government will be giving to local authorities in terms of how that's actually reported. And as we were just discussing earlier regarding the inflation, so one of the key aspects of that is obviously liaising with our economic advisors and our investment advisors in terms of the impact and the forecast for inflation over the year, and what we can do in terms of ensuring that we can not have any impact. So there is an investment firm that we use who provide us what's known as an equity hedge and also a currency hedge. So that's worked extremely well over the last few years that we've had it in place. There's some tweaking that is done in terms of how that is actually put over the instrument. It's a bit technical. However, what we have done, we've had member training for that back in October, and that is in place at the moment. And the committee will be working along with the investment advisor, who will be setting out a timeline in terms of how long we expect that to continue to. If there is a need, depending again on where the situation was inflation. If inflation is predicted to come down, it may be that hedge will be there for a short term or short to medium term, and then it may be taken off completely. But again, it really depends on what our economic advisors and our investment advisors see on that side. Those are the key outcomes that we had at the committee last. Any questions?
Any questions? Yes, John.
At the beginning, I think you said, I think you used the word investment strategy, but I didn't quite hear it. But what the paper that you sent to the various employers, do you think
funding strategy statement?
Funding strategy. Okay, thank you. Could we have a copy of that? This sure. Is a verbal update, so it would seems to me that would be a key document that we could keep.
Yeah, we can circulate that.
Is this in effect the result of the triennial review, or is it? Am I getting confused?
Yes, so when the triennial valuation is being finalized, but I think the actuary had said at that time he doesn't expect to be any major changes within the expectation of the triennial valuation. So on the back of that, they produced the funding strategy statement. Although there will be a second, so once that goes out to the employers for consultation, if there's no further consultation from them in terms of any questions, then that can be is in draft form until the time they've actually made comments on that.
And where does it go then? I presume to both meetings, does it?
Both meetings.
You said it was effectively, I think you said it was a draft. So yeah. Once it's finalised, perhaps we can have it at that stage. That would be.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if we haven't had it, it was subject to consultation, so I'm happy to circulate it to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Rakesh, I think you can copy the board members whenever you send something for something like that, which is I don't think it's confidential, so I don't think it's anything to do with investment decision.
It's put on the website anyway, so it's a public document.
But I think I don't think any one of us keep polling the website to see if any updates are there. So if you can just flag to us, we can have a look. This doesn't have to be in this meeting, but between meetings.
Yeah, sure.
So we can come here with any questions.
Yeah.
Yes, John.
You shouldn't have mentioned the word website. Can you tell me what website you're referring to when you say the website? I mean, we've got the council website, we've got the
council
I don't
website.
know what the other one is. Sorry?
It's the council website. The documents that the pension fund produces normally go on the council website.
It's I have great difficulty in finding anything about pensions on the council website. You can get there in the end, but you often end up with something which was produced 2 years ago or 1 year ago. So is there a particular place on the council website for up-to-date information on pensions? Not, I know there's plenty of stuff for 2018 and 19.
Yeah, there's a
perhaps you could let us know. So
there's a dedicated space within the pensions website for all the material relating to pensions.
Could you let us?
And also, I think we have pensions admin stuff in there, don't we, James?
Could you let us know how we access that? I don't think it's as obvious as you think, actually. I mean, you're more familiar with it than we are, so it would be helpful if you could do that, please.
Yeah, sure.
That's fine. We'll circulate the website there. So there are some policies that are a couple of years out of date because they don't need to be updated annually. But we can certainly go through just to maybe. I'm happy to obviously circulate the link, but then if yourself, John, or any other board members kind of want to do sort of any time, I'm more than happy to set some time aside just to kind of go through a bit more in detail sort of the issues, and we can maybe get up on the screen and kind of show the pension website, maybe kind of go through some particular issues, and that may help. So yeah, I'm happy to offer that as well. But yeah, we'll circulate the link anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to say also, Chair, that we have the annual report, which is published on an annual basis, and that has all these policies within that. So the funding strategy statement, the investment strategy statement, they're all encompassed within the annual report, and that is done on an annual basis.
Yeah, I think
that's published on the. Sorry.
Yeah, last 2 years we saw it. We were not consulted with. We saw it late, so it'd be good to see it before it gets published. So I think that's the whole idea. I mean, for an academic interest, I think we can see it from in the previous year's thing. But I think the real value is if someone wants to read it before it gets published. That's when we can add feedback. Okay, cool. Thanks, Rakesh. Keen to move on. Any questions? Or let's move to the next item. Thank you, Rakesh. Item 8, pensions admin report. With Jackie.
Yes. Hello again. Okay, so just going to run through a couple of things on the in my administration report. So I'll be talking about the latest the latest available at the time of writing administration report that I had from LPPA. Just briefly refer to the potential legislative changes that we've got coming up, and then I will want to talk to you about the new members online portal, which John Saunders has already mentioned earlier. So at the time of writing my report, I only had as I said earlier, I only had the Q2 report, the Q2 from report from LPPA, which finished on September. This showed that the most important points from that were showing that our total membership is still increasing. We've got but we have increases over all sections of the scheme, so that's all active, deferred, and pensioner members. The increase in active membership is still likely to be from the last of the members who have been re-enrolled following on from last February's automatic re-enrollment, getting the last forms up to LPPA and them updating their records. As we've already mentioned, the fact that percentage of cases that are being completed on time within the SLA timescales has dropped, and was dropping. It was actually dropping before we had the implementation of the new pensions administration system, UPM. We have been informed that it was due to some staff shortages, which they have been working on. Pulling that around with emphasis on staff training needs, as Greg alluded to as well. Of the main categories of work, only the new starters and the death cases were the ones that remained above the SLA target. The call waiting times were improving. The customer satisfaction scores increased amongst retirements, although the number of surveys that are being returned have actually decreased. In the future, LPPA is actually going to be changing the way it does its reports, so they're going to be providing us with some monthly reports after the following on from the Q3 being published. So I will be getting quicker updates from LPPA with regards to the cases and being completed and things like that. Moving on to the legislative changes. I've kept them on there because they are important. They are they will have an impact on administration and also potentially a small impact, but only a very small impact on the fund. But there isn't very much that's actually happened since the last meeting on either the exit cap limit, which is the bringing back in of the amount, limiting the amount of money that can be paid out to a member on the exit from a public sector or a local government employment. We're still waiting for the government's response to the responses that all the local authorities put into the consultation. So yeah, that could inform us of how things will be going on that, but no indication of when that will come out. And we are still waiting for the final regulations with regards to the McLeod, which was the age discrimination case brought in by fire brigade scheme members when we were moved over to the career average scheme. So still waiting for that, I'm afraid. But the best thing that's actually come out of the move from LPPA to the UPM Pensions Administration System is the new online member portal. That did go live at the same time as UPM went live for the rest of the administration. However, we didn't want to put it out too much to members start off with, just to make sure it was all nice and stable, first of all. Emails have gone out from LPPA to everybody that they held an email address for, inviting people to come on to the portal and sign up. It's known as Pension Point. I did sign up to it myself just to make sure it was working, so I can confirm, like with John, there it is there. It's looking pretty good. Members can view their own personal details. They can change details as well. They can update them. They can look at what details they've made of any expression of wish for whom they want any death grant to be paid out to, and they can make changes on the website as well. Members can run estimates, unlimited number of estimates, and this is probably the big selling point for it, is that it will reduce down requests for estimates to the actual pensions team. Members can go onto the website themselves into their own personal account and run unlimited number of estimates of whatever date that they choose, as long as they are actually able to retire at the date they choose. They can update it with their current pay figures, or if they expect to be getting a pay rise in the near future, they can put in a pay figure that they choose, and it will provide an estimate of their pension for them. They will also then be able to manipulate it to see if they give up part of their pension, they commute it into lump sum, how much they can get, and it all keeps within HMRC limits on that. So it does work quite well on that, it has to be said. And I have put in a link in the report to videos that are on LPPA's website showing the navigation of the system itself. As has already been mentioned previously, I did put in my report that we have a new chair of the Pensions Committee following the resignation of Councillor Rohit Dasgupta. And also already mentioned, we have a new Pensions Board member following the departure of Veronica Holly. We now have Christine Lander, and I would like to say hello, welcome, and yes, we will get together and give you a proper introduction to the board and bring you up to speed as soon as possible. So are there any questions on that?
Just one, sorry. You said you emailed the members from the LPPA, yeah?
LPPA emailed any member that they held an email address for.
Okay, a
details
lot
the
of
pages
people
point.
would have, yeah, a lot of people would have been in the pension prior to like emails and email addresses. Are you sending out documents to people as well?
I am planning within the next couple of weeks to, well, even sooner than that, I want it to be on this week if possible. I wanted to put something out onto the Newham internal email comms, just saying it is here, please go in and sign up, because even though that, yeah, but there are lots of people who may have an email address and that we just didn't have it anyway, so we need to let them know. And yeah, it will be going. We will be mentioning it in any other documentation that's going out as well, because it's something to push now. We want to get people onto it. So yes.
And that then also to touch on it, will sort of other employers as well will be kind of pushed to try and publicise the pension point as well, because we can more easily control the Newham core membership, because we obviously do the payroll for Newham officers. But in relation to the wider scheme, including schools, we'll obviously be pushing MPW for schools and then over the wider employers as well. So yeah, it's the same message. The key message as well to try and get out is it's not your work email, because we want your email to kind of follow you if you do leave Newham, because if you leave your work email, then essentially you won't be able to get back into the system. So you need to be kind of using that. So we're getting some information from LPPA about the logins that people are using, so we can try and pick up if people are submitting work email. So it's kind of all part of messaging, really, because yeah, it's definitely a big step forward, but when you go from nothing to something, there's a lot of work you kind of got to do in between, because yeah, you can't tell everyone to register for something that they don't actually have contact details for. So that's where the employers have to step in.
Okay, thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, Jackie, and thanks, Christine. Welcome to the board. So, John.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a question about the fee that we pay to LPPA. Do they provide any regular reports about how sufficient or insufficient that fee is?
You're talking about value for money of their contract?
Well, not necessarily value for money, but just how much they're spending against the fee that we're paying. And the reason I raise it is in the report here, it talks about staff shortages, which on the one hand, everything else being equal, might lead to a reduction in the fee because they're not paying for those staff. However, I do accept that there are other means of covering that, but I don't know what they're actually doing. And then the other comment is steps have been put into place to increase recruitment and retention. Now, potentially there's additional staffing costs in that. And I'm just wondering what the impact of all of these things is on the annual fee that we're paying.
So in relation to the fee, so just to confirm, just for everyone's benefit as well. So the arrangement that we have is that we agree an hourly, a member rate, per member rate for the fund to start the year off with. So where we're on a shared cost basis is essentially when it gets to the end of the year, it's apportioning their total cost between themselves and the rest of the fund. So it's an apportionment of the cost. So they wouldn't necessarily be able to direct to say this is specific Newham spend. But yeah, it's something that it's part of, well, when we come up to their challenge session of that, the next year's budget is part of the questions we're going to be raising as well. So yeah, we haven't got like detail around how much they spent on external, because really what you want to work out is how much they're spending on the agency market, as well as they're actually trying to, where they talk about grow their own, you want to know, are you actually growing your own, or are you actually buying your own temporarily and then having to do that again in 6 months time? So yeah, they're the sort of questions we'll be kind of be raising ahead of the new year. And hopefully it'd be the first year for a while that we're not having to have the awkward moment of a large price increase, which would be quite a nice thing not to have to talk to committee about.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
Would these discussions be taking place in April?
So the
James?
discussion should really be taking place in the next few weeks, actually, because the budget pack for the new year is kind of open to challenge. So once that's kind of with us, then we'll be kind of setting a meeting in place with them. But yeah, I've kind of looked at a few of them because for me, it's the assumptions around one is inflation. It's kind of like if you're going to go for, if we're rocking up at a 10% inflation, it's kind of like you giving your staff a 10% pay rise. Yeah, it's how it's kind of working. So yeah, how you justifying your 10% increase. Yeah,
Okay.
for example. So
if there are any issues, then they'll be brought to board.
I say so as far as actually signing off for the next year's cost should be sort of part of the next kind of committee in relation to the cost, but in relation to sort of the challenge session, we'll kind of be feeding back, and if need be, we can invite sort of LVPA, sort of if Greg in part of his role as well can necessarily be picking that up, but I think once we have our challenge session, we can feed back in relation to that, because that's part of the contract monitoring, is actually just to have that session with them to kind of go, okay, we see your costs, but we have, there's a few things I have seen some provisional figures for next year, and I kind of just look and go, okay, you might just need to explain the inflation thing to me.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Thanks, James. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, John. Okay, thanks, Jackie. I think we probably have the questions for that section. Can we move on to the next item, which is the risk and compliance report?
Stays with me. So we got the latest report from LPPA at the time of writing was the December report, and the main points note in that were we had 8 complaints received in December, 1 received in November, and 8 received in October. So that brings our annual total to 28. There's 1 data breach occurring in December. With regards to the complaints that have been made, the majority of the complaints were with regards to the delays in getting the cases sorted out, and that was over a variety of types of cases, and fairly certain that will be put down to the fact that they've just gone onto a new system. So
okay. Thank you. Any questions? No. Okay, let's move on. This is again with you. Did we cover a lot of this in the section with Greg, Jackie, the performance report for quarter 2?
Oh, that's just the fact that the reports themselves are actually in the pack.
Okay, I think we probably covered that, right? Any other thing you need to flag, or we're happy with that? Okay,
that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. James, terms of reference.
Cool. Okay, so just in relation to terms of reference, so I've just done it, and it might not necessarily be clear, so I might just have to just quote just a page number. So so the initial section starts off with just, well, the proposed version of the terms of reference, and then from page 73, it's just kind of just kind of being clear on what the change I've necessarily made on there. So in relation to member representatives, so currently we have it that each of the 3 unions across, or the 3 main unions in Newham can appoint a rep to sit as an employee rep. The part that I've kind of added just to add what happens necessarily if we don't necessarily have a rep from a trade union, and that's a case of actually carrying out a transparent piece of recruitment across all of trade union and fund members, and then it's appointed by the council. So essentially offering a place for anyone who is an active or a deferred or an in pension member to actually have an opportunity to sit on the board. So we'd essentially write to everyone and advertise it. The difference with the employer rep is just reworded in the sense, so we are actually going to now offer to every employer of the fund an opportunity to sort of be one of our employer reps. The appointment of the chair section, I just wanted to kind of clarify that yes, should be meeting twice a year with the pension committee chair, and that's something that I've addressed with Rakesh, and Councillor Gray is sort of looking to try to get a meeting in as soon as possible, because we obviously do want to be compliant with our terms of reference. And in relation to sort of interactions with the committee, so obviously presenting the annual report and the business plan at a committee, which will be noted by the pension committee. I kind of want to look at sort of the interactions, and that may change obviously post Councillor Gray's appointment to the chair of committee. So where I've kind of sort of put an appendice in sort of the document where I kind of want, and I think it kind of touched on the section with Rakesh, is essentially any point that the board raise in relation to anything that we want committee to respond to is formally documented. So then that response is clearly recorded on the same log, and then that section, that table, is a part of the sort of the pension board update as part of the admin section within the committee. So in theory, it just gives that transparency that there is dialogue between the two. But I admit from conversations this morning, although I wasn't part of them with Councillor Gray and Rakesh and the team, it does sound like there may be a bit more liaison between the committee and the board. But I think until we have the meeting with Tej and Councillor Gray, then I can't say exactly, but that may just kind of tweak. But I do really want to push the need to kind of have things documented in relation to questions, because I'm conscious on the fact of, you know, the board's concern around things get raised and don't get followed through. So that's where I was kind of touching on having a log, so that actually anything that we want committee to respond to, we clearly have a response for it. In relation to the remit of the board, this is kind of sort of tied into what I was just kind of mentioning, but one of the things we've got in relation to the board, it's kind of the scope, and comparing to others, I couldn't really reword it into the specific things that a board really should be looking at each year. Really, that's covered within the pension board plan. So my kind of take on it is that the wording can necessarily, you know, stick sort of in 2.1 where it's referring its compliance with regulations. My kind of view is, in theory, that's right. You know, we should be complying, you know, making sure that we've got compliance with regulation, compliance with code of practices. So it really is a case of just kind of picking out the areas as part of our plan of what we want to focus on for the year, i.e. sort of are we focusing on ensuring that we're meeting KPIs, therefore, you know, the standing items reverse to more performance, you know, in relation to the finance section. If there's a particular sort of view from the chair of committee and the chair of the board to focus on a particular area within the finance part, then again, that would be kind of a standing item, but that would be covered within the business board plan. So not wholesale changes to the terms of reference, but enough to kind of give us a bit of reassurance that the recruitment of the board, and I should really touch on that I will be emailing board members after this board meeting, just to kind of get a steer on sort of views for staying for another term, because your view, if you want to stay with it, a member of the board, the term kind of ends sort of in the autumn this year. So if you don't want to sort of stay past your 4-year term, then we're going to need to start the recruitment process. So that's kind of why I'll be asking sort of early indications of kind of views, and that includes the chair. So I will be kind of writing just to kind of get everyone's kind of view on what they want to do, obviously individually. So there's no sort of, it won't be in a group email, but yeah, I appreciate when that comes through, if you just kind of respond, just so it gives an indication. If you're happy to sit on for sort of next year in the foreseeable, for the next 4 years. So that's kind of the terms of reference, really. The main thing I kind of wanted to sort of include is that I really do feel having some form of log is the way to go. I think the only thing left really open is probably is my kind of view is, do you necessarily want the pension board section pulled out of the admin paper and it's a separate item, and then it is made to be reported on by chair of the board, which essentially will be recapping what was discussed at the meeting and confirming any kind of response that's been agreed between the board and the chair on a particular action raised, or whether it sticks within the admin paper. Yeah, sorry, that's the update with a question thrown at the end.
Okay, thank you, John.
Can you just clarify what we're doing here?
So what
Page 73, I think, is what you've just been through. Is that right? Which
Yeah.
is a summary of the update.
Yeah.
Are you recommending that we replace the terms of reference with this?
No. So
Or are these meant to be additions or clarifications?
So essentially, yeah, so page 61 is the terms of reference with the changes that I've made on points page 73. So I didn't want to just send through sort of an update with a load of squiggles on it to say this has been changed, like a track changes. So what I've done is sent through what the terms of reference I'm kind of proposing to take forward for clearance, and then the sort of the page on 73 is just literally this is sort of new compared to the old terms of reference. So as I said, very subtle wording changes on a few of them. It's mainly around the recruitment, but that's what I just kind of wanted to try and be transparent of what's been changed without sending through a track changed report.
The section on the remit of the board is, I personally think it's very good, but that's quite a change really from what we've been doing in the past. I mean, it's suggesting that the board make regular recommendations to the pension committee, which I think we were discussing earlier, and we were a bit undecided about that. And there's another couple of points in there which I think once we've got used to them will be very helpful.
Yeah.
Can I refer to page 61 though as well?
Yep.
This in the middle there, in the middle of 2.1, there's this reference to the pensions regulator. It says one of our duties is to secure compliance with the requirements imposed in relation to the LGPS by the pensions regulator. Now, I would hate to have to find out what those are. If this is important, can we have some guidance on what we actually need to do on that?
No, that's
not necessarily now, but in the future.
I'll give you a quick answer, and then so essentially the regulator has a code of practice that we should be adhering to. So that was part of the audit that we carried out, or sort of a review Jackie initially carried out, I think early last year, just about our initial compliance with it. And then not long after doing that, there's been forever talk that the code of practices was going to be updated. So the initial work, we were going to have that as a standing item for comparing how we comply, knowing that the code of practices was going to be changing. We haven't sort of progressed that forward, but we're kind of, in theory, that's what we want to do, is having a standing item about how we're complying to the standards set out by the regulator. But yeah, in relation to it as well, is where the point above it about to secure compliance with the LGPS regulations, that's again, it's more of a general statement rather than a specific action, and they're the kind of ones where we'll look to say how we want to sort of carry out the board to try and work towards compliance with regulations, because in the nicest way, the board can't cover every single part of the regs, so it's more of identifying what we do as a board want to kind of focus our attentions on, but that's why the statements sound a bit more I suppose less specific than you would like. But yeah, in relation to the regulator one, I will have a conversation with Jackie offline because I know that we've been holding out the out of assumption that the code of practice was going to be turned on its head a bit. So we'll bring back an update where at least if we can have it sort of noted as action to actually have pensions regulator code of practice as an item for next board, we can at least either provide where we are with it or provide an update where they are with the regulator is with its update.
If you do that, could you give us some guidance of the key things that we are supposed to do?
Yeah, no worries.
On behalf of the pensions regulator, because the documents I've seen will take about a week to read, and you end up not being able to remember what you were supposed to do. So, I mean, some guidance there. I would
the LGPS regs will take you a lifetime to absorb and really be able to be forwarding. But yeah, we're in relation to the code of practice, there is sort of it's a long list, but it should be sort of a workable list to kind of sort of keep as an outstanding item. So yeah, what we can do is we'll judge on what we have to say at next board in relation to the code of practice, and then what we can do, we could potentially just do a standalone sort of training where we've done it before, is just to kind of go over a particular issue, and depending on sort of where it is, we may even could tie that into sort of an update on the pension point system. So it shouldn't take long to go through pension point for you guys. So it might be a case of doing a double training session.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, James, I had a couple of questions. So to add to John's point, there's a gap analysis done and best practices highlighted apart from just the code of conduct. I think about 3 years back. I forget the body which carried out that analysis. So they reviewed all the local government schemes across the country, and then they came up with best practices and things to avoid. So I think apart from the regulations, it'd be good to just compare against the best practices highlighted as part of that exercise.
So that's the code of practice from the pensions regulator. But yeah, that's fine.
Was that done by the pensions regulator, or was it third party?
I believe that's referring to the pension regulator, but I will.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be useful. And I mean, the gap analysis and the regulations, because some things like we haven't had line of sight of the scheme annual report till after the fact. So that clearly I think that's meeting the regs there. So that's sort of one of the reasons why I wanted the internal audit to review this board, see how it's functioning. Well, not just the board, but the whole governance setup. Because if they say that they don't have anything on schedule for another 1 year, that's may not be ideal. But we need to set ourselves to tougher standards and try to meet them, basically, or else it's
that's fine. I can certainly take back your views as well to audit, and we'll see where we kind of go from there. But yeah, they're obviously, because it's an internal audit covering the whole authority, they do have to kind of sort of do their audits on a schedule of how often that they actually do it. So some areas are sort of only done in sort of every 3 to 4 years. But that's fine.
Okay, thank you. And the employer representatives, the text you've added. So I know John Saunders and John Hollins represent the Newham borough, but we don't have any members.
Yeah, that's
the other employers. So does that need to be on the?
That's essentially
on the terms of reference.
That's kind of where the wording's kind of changed. Is essentially when it's referred to like a transparency piece. So every employee will get written to, and then if we're lucky and we get a number of people, then we'll have to sort of do an interview where we'll just be ascertaining who's got kind of the best skills to sort of come onto the board. So, that's in theory. Some more pension boards actually operate where they don't have the union reps. They actually offer it to all the members, and then sort of from there it's kind of like an interview process. So it's different ways we kind of do it, where we have the union reps as the member reps, and then we can kind of go from there. So yeah, but yeah, that's the plan, is to write to them all. So depending on everyone's feedback about their plans for sort of the next term, that would dictate how many sort of employee reps we're necessarily looking at.
Okay, cool. And finally, any edits you make to the terms of reference, is that something which we will approve, or is the committee going to approve it, or is
So it go through
Baro
as
going to
part.
approve
It go as part of the overall term. Trying to think which paper. It forms part of one of the papers that committee approve. The terms of reference from board sits within it, and my mind has completely left me which one that's called. But essentially, unless there's any other additions or any other faults, then kind of how it's worded there as part of this pack is kind of what's going to be put forward. But apologies, my brain's missed me at this time. On what it kind of gets put, because it's not separately, it kind of goes through, it's part of a wider one, but I'll come back on. It'll probably
so
hit me.
it'll be good to know that, so then if we can then think over this and come back with feedback
that's
before
fine.
it gets finalized.
Yeah, that's fine. It's, if you can either come back with anything sort of from now in the next couple of weeks, then yeah, we can I can incorporate anything, or at least come back with explanations about if I haven't incorporated something. So yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and the log is a great idea, and I think we can start using it. I think given the open questions that we've raised from the last meeting to now, even today, if you can start that as the first few items, we can present it in the next committee.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think that would be, like I said, I just kind of want to get to the stage where you're kind of happy that, because it's a little bit more challenging to have sort of an open discussion sort of at committee if it's an item on their agenda. But if we've at least formally raised it, got the feedback from it, we can at least say that we've formally closed an action. And this was the response, and this is what board was satisfied with it. So it kind of closes the loop to show that we actually, got an answer, and we agreed a way forward. So yeah, I'm glad you were happy with it.
Yeah, and I note that we're not a decision-making authority. So if we recommend something, or if we make a proposal, is that where we would do that?
It's so essentially, if you kind of said, I'm just trying to think of an instance. If you kind of said, we kind of want to get a bit more clarity on, the process that went for approving this fund manager. It's probably a bad example. Rakesh probably there if you heard me said that. But essentially, if you said that, and then that'd be a case of that would be then, as far as I'm concerned, taken forward by Rakesh to chair, and then it'd be taken forward at a committee if there's a particular point to sort of raising it, or it would be kind of fed back as part of there, and there'd be sort of an agreed response that's come from committee. And then that's logged, and then that's kind of fed back as part of the admin paper. So then it shows that we actually got a response for a point that's been raised. Like, as you said, not decision making, but it doesn't stop you actually making suggestions or asking for additional information. So it's just a case of not losing sight of it. And then once we don't lose sight of it, it's important just to just to make sure that it's formally noted by a committee. So then they're all in agreement.
So can I request you send a Word version of the terms of reference, noting your changes and asking for feedback? So that should be one of the actions. So then we can, you can get that feedback.
Perfect.
From board members, and please specify by when you need it.
No worries, we will do.
Okay, thanks, James. Membership update.
Cool. So this is just a very, very quick one. So there wasn't a considerable amount of change from last period. We are looking at sort of the jump necessarily in December of number of contributing employees to work out why it's kind of gone there. So there's a little bit of data validation just going on through there. But in theory, there has been sort of relatively static numbers, as you can see on the first table. The employees who got pulled back into the scheme as part of re-enrollment, we're kind of going on the basis we had about a 74% opt-out rate, which, considering normally we, from our last re-enrollment campaign, was sort of in the low 80s. So a better performance this time round. But the main thing that we're kind of really looking at, if I'm being brutally honest, is are we having a lot of opt-outs? As the point was raised earlier, and that's what we're kind of trying to do these exercises really to start seeing if there's a trend in the data coming down. So the second table on there is just showing Newham as an officer's payroll. And then we've got the fund level on table 3, where it's just literally showing us that we've had a steady incline of membership to the scheme, which, yes, more employees make more members, but we still haven't seen necessarily the drop we were expecting that to kind of start to creep down if we've actually got an opt-out problem across all employers. In relation to communications, I kind of touched on it, but that's what we're looking to get pensions involved within sort of a wider finance wellbeing workshop that I'm pushing HR to finalise and get across the line, because that's going to work in 2 bases. Is just to kind of give people an update on pensions benefits outside of just receiving a pension at the end of their working life, sort of the other benefits that come through, without doing a dedicated pension session, because the feedback I got from when I seeked advice on the best way to market the pension scheme for new members was kind of within a financial wellbeing package. A dedicated pension session may have the adverse effect of actually increasing people's knowledge of the 50-50 to actually opt out of the 4 and join the 50-50, and also to know that, you know, it's fresh in their mind. A lot of people are members of the pension scheme and just continue to pay into it without necessarily realizing that they can opt out of it. So it's a case of just trying to get the right balance, and I think putting it within an overall finance wellbeing part is hopefully going to strike the right balance. It's just it's a very tricky balance, if I'm being brutally honest, to how you market the pension scheme, because you obviously want to increase membership, but you also don't want to give up a lot of your, you know, full paying employees into the 50-50 scheme, and also making it more known that there is a choice whether you are a part of the pension scheme or not. So there's more risk of losing membership just as much as there is to gain, because, as I said before, we've only just come out of a re-enrollment campaign. So the people who have opted out physically opted out within a year ago. So it's not the best of strategies to kind of push it too hard. I don't, from the feedback I was kind of getting. So yeah, that's kind of comms membership just in a nutshell, really.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, yeah, that's good. Thanks, James. Next is for you, training.
Yeah, so this is just, again, a live tracker of training. Obviously, I add Christine onto the schedule. So in relation to future training that we're hopefully going to sort of raise.
So I don't have that in my pack. I don't know if the others have that.
Oh. Is
Other
it page
members have it?
77?
77 is the, yeah, okay, I do. Sorry,
You got
apologies.
it? Yeah. No, that's fine. So yeah, so essentially the training that we're looking to kind of do in relation to, we definitely want to do the UPN pension point training, and we were toying between whether it's going to be LPPA or officers. I'm leaning towards officers. We obviously want to get an update update in relation to sort of upcoming legislative changes. So that will probably come around about April, May time, and sort of as part of a technical update. But yeah, I think the UPM one is the top of the list, and then yeah, if we want to sort of do a sort of a joint one with the code of practice on it as well, so we can do a double session. So I'll be kind of sending through sort of dates probably in the next couple of weeks. So probably look to do a session maybe the middle of March. But yeah, that was just training. It's just a live tracker just to show what we've kind of been done, keep it for accuracy, because then it just make it life easier when we come to do the annual report of just lifting and shifting it into the annual report.
And I think on that, when you contact, rather when you get a confirmation from board members, or whenever you have to, let's say, hire new members when necessary, we'll have to follow through with the training update. Even if it's the same set of members, please, I think it's good to revisit that.
Yep, that's fine. Yeah.
Any questions for James? Okay, thanks, James. Final item on the agenda is about next meeting. So it's scheduled for 3rd April. We may have some changes to that, but based on what. Okay, so we said that's not going to happen for till next municipal year, right? The date of the meeting, the board meeting schedule versus the committee meeting.
Yeah, so this may get moved to be in the annual report, the annual meeting instead.
Okay, so I think as of now, it's scheduled for 3rd April. Okay, that's the end of the meeting. So thank you everyone for attending. So I'll request Pauline to